training out here in Oregon, and we're just getting ready to get started. Hopefully the process will go smoothly. I don't know if it happens to you guys. It seems like there's a technology trap that's like the Bermuda Triangle sometimes for me. You know, I have everything all ready to go, and then we start recording and things go a little askew. So that can be a little frustrating sometimes, but we're going to give it a go and see exactly what happens. It appears that it is live, but not necessarily coming up on YouTube right now, so that's a little frustrating. But nevertheless, we're going to give it a shot and see how that all works. So bear with me as we try to get this thing all squared away. If it ends up not going live, I'm going to go ahead and just continue to record and share some of the feedback with you guys. And we'll go from there. So working on this right now, and we should be cranking up here pretty quickly. Let's see if we're actually from there. So working on this right now, and we should be cranking up here pretty quickly. Let's see if we're actually from. All right. It looks like we are live, so that's exciting. So in about 3 or 4 minutes here, we're going to go ahead and get started. There's obviously some technical issues we're still working our way through. God bless all of us, and as we manage this technology, it's really interesting. It seems that many times in my career, both as a instructor, but also in other aspects of my professional life on the sales side, when I'm using or leveraging technology to do an important presentation or actually have something that I want to share with subscribers, or in this case, with you guys, or in the case of my sales career with prospective clients or staff, technology and Murphy's Law always combine for an interesting experience, to say the very least. So today what I wanted to do is I wanted to talk to you about suppressors. So for many years as a shooter, for the last 30 years, I've sort of been fascinated by suppressors, but I've sort of convinced myself that the challenge of actually owning suppressors and then using them was a big, big hurdle, and one that I would be challenged at best to overcome. So over the last several months, I started doing some work in terms of, this is probably a year and a half. So when I'm talking several months, 2 or 3 years ago, and I met a couple of people at the range, both students of mine as well as other folks that I know. And one is a local guy on the job here. Josh is his name, and he works for one of the local law enforcement groups out here. And Josh had several suppressors on with him at the range when we were shooting. And I started shooting them, and I said, "Oh man, I got to have these." And he said, "You know, the process isn't really that bad, Seth. You might want to investigate it, do a little research." So I started doing some research, and obviously YouTube, the internet, there's a whole lot of information that's there for you if you're willing to invest a little bit of your time to educating yourself about a particular topic. So I sort of went down that path, started reading everything I could get my hands on, started engaging with folks that knew something about suppressors, folks that own them, really just going really from a grassroots standpoint. So what do you own? What do you like about it? How do you use it? What's the process? What are the pros and cons of owning suppressors? And then what does that look like in terms of all the other stuff that goes along with it? So you can go ahead and go through the process, the NFA process, and fill out Form 4, which is the proper form to use. And you can buy the suppressor. You can wait the 6 months. You can pay the tax stamp. You can go through the background check. You can do all that administrative stuff, and then you get the can. Well, you get your suppressor, and then there's a whole lot more to it than that. So for pistols, like what adapter, depending on the thread pitch that you're using on specific firearms, what thread pitch are you going to use? So there was a whole education associated with that. And it was interesting. And initially, candidly, it was a bit overwhelming. I was sort of like, whoa, dude, like, what do you mean I have to get this and this and this and this? And what do you mean I have to do, this crazy thing, use special grease? And what does all that look like? So I was fortunate enough to have some really great people that helped me along the way. Josh was one, local dealer here in Portland. James was another. Banished suppressors, who I bought a couple of suppressors from, were very helpful. And I started going through that process. And the big takeaway for me with suppressors is there's an inconvenience and a learning curve that you have to go through to actually go through the paperwork, do the background checks, and do all that kind of stuff. And then on top of that, there is the actual live experience. What is involved in that? How do you clean them? How do you make sure they're properly mounted? All those kinds of things. So in my experience, it was just a matter of sort of learning by doing. Now, all the teaching that we do and all of my experience also at taking classes is most people learn from doing. They are, in fact, experiential learners. I can tell you the information, I can share the information, but until you go and actually do it, there's going to be a gap between what information that you process, and let's say you attend a class and you're going to take the information, you're going to retain some percentage of that. It's typically less than 50% unless you're a highly intelligent person who's taking notes. But it's a real challenge to retain that. The way I've seen most people learn, particularly if it comes to firearms, is by doing. They need to have the actual kinesthetic experience of holding the firearm, shooting the gun, working the action, working fundamentals, grip stance, and all those other kinds of things, until they get to a point going from the intellectual I think level down to that subconscious of, I feel, and then finally the subconscious level, I am. I can operate this firearm in a safe, proficient way without having to think consciously about it. And that's what lots of practice will do. So when it came to suppressors, I sort of went through that same process. No surprise, because that's how I learned that way. So as I mentioned, I shot a number of different suppressors. And what I really, really liked about them, yeah, sure, there's a huge difference in the amount of noise that an unsuppressed firearm produces versus a suppressed firearm. That amount of noise is really very significant. But the other things that I really noticed and I really like was you're reducing as well some of the felt recoil. Not a huge deal, but frankly, if I can mitigate more recoil when I'm operating a firearm, that's advantageous to me, very much so. And then the third one is just the concussion, particularly if you're shooting a long gun with a shorter barrel. So if you have an SBR, and even if you're just using an A2 flash hider, there's a fair amount of concussion. If you're using a muzzle brake, there's a lot of concussion. So as soon as you suppress that SBR or any long gun, the amount of concussion, if you're firing and you're doing tactical drills with multiple people on either side of you, or if you're at your range sometime and you're sitting next to someone on a bench, in close proximity, and as that person's firing away with some, muzzle brake on the gun and all the gas and concussion is coming back at you, and then they put a suppressor on it, it's a night and day different experience. So, to start with, people say, well, it's a silencer. I'm like, there's no such thing as a silencer. You cannot completely silence a gun. There's some noises that happen with the gun. So if you have a hammer on a rifle or a handgun, and that hammer drops, right? That's one sound that is going to happen regardless, right? That's a mechanical sound. A suppressor does not change that mechanical sound. If it's a semi-automatic, The bolt is also a sound that happens when you fire that gun, right? Gas impingement or direct impingement or piston gun, the bolt is going to reciprocate, or the slide is going to reciprocate in recoil, or you're going to have to manually do it. Fair enough. Some people will say, well, if I'm using super low velocity ammo, I won't cycle. Okay, fair enough. So you have to cycle it. So that's a second sound. What the actual mechanics of the can, this is the Banish 45 can that has, it's modular, so you can add some width or additional length to it, which then further suppresses the sound. But what that's doing is, as the bullet is leaving the barrel itself, there's gases that are being pushed through, right? Because the powder has ignited. There's nowhere for that round to go but through the barrel. So it's spinning through the barrel. And as it comes out, as soon as it leaves, there's all that pressure that comes behind that. So that noise of the gases coming out, burning, and the bullet itself as it leaves the barrel, and if it's going greater at a speed greater than 1,100 feet per second, then you're going to also get a sonic crack, right? That's just physics. So the can and the suppressors are filled with baffles, and they're held in this tube. And so as the gas works its way through, the pressure of the gas is bled off, as well as some of the pressure behind it. So it's going to drop the velocity of the bullet a little bit. I'm not going to go into the science of how much, because I don't know, it's not that important to me. So as that bullet is spinning out, the gas is coming out, that suppressor then is bleeding off some of that pressure and some of that gas. And depending on if you're shooting subsonic ammunition, again, less than 800 feet per second, you're also not going to have that sonic crack. So it's mitigating that pressure as the pressure builds up and comes back at you in terms of felt recoil. It's mitigating that, and it's mitigating the sound. You're adding a little bit of weight and length to the front of the firearm itself. And so that is something to consider, like pros and cons. I mean, the only con I can really think is the gun is a little bit longer, and depending on the type of suppressor, right, there's some weight to it. Like this is fairly heavy. This is the Wolverine. This is the by Dead Air, and this is a 7.62 by 39 suppressor for an AKM variant, something like that. Now that's quite a bit heavier than this Banish 45 can, but it's not terrible. And frankly, it's okay. I mean, adding weight, as long as I don't have to carry it for a long period of time or whatever, for me is fine. So when you think of suppressors, like what other things are you looking at? Well, the other thing that was important to me was to have a suppressor where I could remove the baffles and clean them. Now, there are suppressors that are fully sealed and you can't clean them, and they'll have a life. And that life, depending on the ammunition and a whole lot of other things, might be 10,000 rounds. I wanted a suppressor that I could clean. So the Banish suppressors, there are other people other than Banish that make them, they allow the tubes open on either side. And so you can take out the baffles and clean them. And then, boy, this is how a rat hole you can really go down a rat hole with suppressors. And then I started looking at ways to clean them. And I found sonic cleaners. And sonic cleaners are really a great way. And it's pretty inexpensive to get a sonic cleaner to, clean the baffles off pretty much. And then it's just a moderate amount of elbow grease to get the rest of the carbon off. So you can use that as well. And I'm like, dude, like that's pretty sweet. Cleaning your cans, putting them all back together for the next time you go shooting, they're fantastic. So, I've had many people say to me, subscribers who've written in, and they said, hey, like, what can should I get with? I've only got $500. And I would say if you're going to get one can, get a 22 can. So much fun to shoot. And again, 22, super, super soft recoil. If you're shooting high velocity ammunition, right? It's moving quick, and it's normally moving above 12,000 feet per second. And so 1,200 feet per second, excuse me. And so you're getting that crack. But when you shoot this, it's going to reduce that ammunition, high velocity ammunition, sound and felt recoil and blast significantly. And when you go to subsonic ammunition, again, less than 1,100 feet per second, and you shoot it from a bolt gun, oh, baby, I'm talking just plain joy. So much fun, such an exciting thing to do. And once you start, in my opinion, once you start shooting suppressed firearms, you kind of want to shoot everything you shoot suppressed firearms. You just want to suppress your firearms. I mean, it's a more enjoyable experience. Now, what's the downside of that? Well, there is some decrease in pressure, right? Because that round is that pressure that is of the bullet coming out of the barrel itself at the end is going to be reduced a little bit. And again, I'm not going to go into the science of this because I don't really care. Some people really care about that. Like, I got to get every last little bit of energy out of that. And that's fine. If that's what you want to do, rock on to you. Fantastic. But if that's less important to you, then suppressors are pretty nice to have. The other part of this, and this is really important to think about, is that when you're on a range and there are a lot of people shooting, and you're the guy with the can, like, people want to shoot next to you because you're just not obnoxious, right? And when you're teaching new shooters, one of the other things I've found is, like, new shooters, when they shoot suppressed firearms, it's just a far more pleasant experience for them because they've never had the experience. They don't know what they're expecting. And frankly, a loud crack or that sonic crack as the bullet exceeds 1,100 feet per second is just something that is distracting. So you put a can suppressor on a firearm and you teach new shooters with that, they have a very, very positive experience, and they want to come back and shoot more and learn more about firearms. And for those of us who care about our Second Amendment rights, we want to get as many people out to the range for a safe, pleasurable experience as we can, because quite frankly, we need to educate people on the safe, practical use of firearms. And when people go from what they heard in social media or they heard on CNN, and then they hear all this bad stuff, and then they go and they meet people at the range, like, man, those people are really safe, and they're really cool, and they're really nice, and they're incredibly friendly. Hey, guns aren't so bad. That's what we need more of. So I think, from my perspective, if you own firearms, even if you own one firearm, you owe it to yourself to at least consider getting suppressors now, or a suppressor for that firearm. Now, there are a whole lot of different manufacturers out there. So, some of the ones I just made a note of, there's Silencer Co. They're great. Fantastic. Gemtech, Whip Machine, Yankee Hill, Dead Air, Banish, Rugged. So there's a whole bunch of them. If I left you off, right, I'm sorry. It was not intentional. I know you guys, everybody makes great cans. I do recommend going with someone that is a reputable company, that when you call them up and you screw something up or there's some problem you don't know, they're gonna service you, and they're gonna take care of you, and they're gonna warranty their product if something goes bad. As far as the actual paperwork and forms, you're going to need to fill out the ATF Form 4. If you buy your suppressors through a local FFL dealer who has the license to do this stuff, they'll guide you through the process. It's not that hard. And many of them have these kiosks that allow you to do that whole background check, your fingerprints and your photograph and everything right there in the kiosk. So they can make it really easy for you. Yes, you still have to pay the $200 tax stamp. Yes, if you haven't, you can set up a firearms trust and you can manage everything through that. Yes, the new trust requirements mean that every item that's in the trust has to have, a separate tax stamp. And that applies to anybody who's on the trust. They also have to go through the same process. So again, bureaucratic headache, money process, background checks, there is an expense doing this. On the other hand, right, if you amortize it and you say, well, I'm going to shoot this firearm or this suppressor and take care of it for the rest of my life, and I've got 40, 50 years ahead of me, I'd say if you shoot a fair amount, it's going to cost you pennies, to own it over that 50 years. So I'm a big believer in this, in owning suppressors. Now, politically, it's kind of nuts that you would think this item, which makes it less obnoxious when you're around a shooting range to hear people shooting, if that bothers you, or let's say you own a house in the area of a shooting range. The number one complaint from every shooting club that I've been a member of or been on the board with is people complain about the noise. Well, if 80 or 90% of the people had suppressors, that noise wouldn't be there and people wouldn't be bothered by it. So why wouldn't the government, especially those on the far left who want to take care of the environment and respect, all the people who don't like the noise, well, make it easier to get suppressors. Criminals aren't going out and attaching things that make their firearm heavier and longer and still can be heard. They're not going to go through that hassle. The people who are going to go through that hassle, right, are just law-abiding citizens. So rather than making an NFA item where you have to register these and go through all the headache and hassle and money for the tax stamp, make it so I can walk into any FFL dealer, I can fill out my paperwork, I can complete my background check, and I can walk out of that store with this. This is a non-lethal item. It doesn't do anything. If I hit you hard in the head, yes, I could hurt you. And if I hit you hard enough in the head with this multiple times, I could hurt you and maybe injure you badly or send you to the hospital. Or if I was some evil psycho and I continued to beat you, maybe I could even kill you. But this isn't the problem. The problem is the person behind whatever tool that's being misused and used illegally to commit a crime. It is not the tool itself. Now, my folks, friends that are on the far progressive side, they don't get that, but it's a pretty easy thing to understand, I think, for most people. So I want to wrap this up pretty quickly here. I do want to say, unfortunately, I can't see the comments that if you're sharing comments. I know we've had quite a few people watching the video, so I really appreciate that engagement and really appreciate all your feedback and thoughts. I do see some other comments. Oh, I am getting them here. Okay, and so some people asking me about some of the new firearms that are coming out. Some of the new M&Ps, and I have had a chance to use my M&P to 2.0, not 2.0. I was corrected by Smith & Wesson. 2.0 4¼ inch barrel with the silencer the Banish suppressor, and the can was awesome. It was awesome and it was great. It functioned flawlessly. The only challenge I've had with any of my pistols has been the Glock 21. So the Glock 21 with its recoil spring doesn't always go fully back into battery. I've got a lighter recoil spring now and it's working 5. So I went from the 18-pound to a 17 one, or to a 16. I'm going to a 15 and see if I can get consistency on it. Every once in a while, won't go back into battery. So I have to give it a shove, right, to get it into back in battery. And other than that, now with the new recoil spring working great. Shooting it on braced pistols, I have to say, it's the bomb. I had a couple of students out recently, and I had them use the PSA ARV9, and I mean, these two guys were just pigs in poop. They had so much fun because they're actually able to, shoot this suppressed pistol and really had a great experience. And we were shooting some 147 grain, some my reloads. So super quiet, no concussion, just a beautiful experience. So we had a Canadian subscriber writing in and saying that they're illegal in Canada. And again, that makes no sense to me from just a moral standpoint. I'm sorry to you, for those in Canada who have to go through that grief. It's just a bunch of BS, in my opinion. But for those of you who live in states, and there are several states, most states allow them. I think there are 10 states that don't. And again, that's just all a bunch of garbage. I mean, it's interesting because they're legal in Connecticut, but Connecticut also has, an AR-15 ban. They have a more than 10 round magazine ban. They have all this stuff, but suppressors are fine. I don't quite understand this, other than ignorant people being afraid of something because of some movie they watched. And I just encourage anyone who's interested in firearms not to watch movies and think that's firearms, because that's not. So I haven't tried it. Somebody else is saying that to run it on an M&P 2.0, the 3.6 inch compact, or even the subcompact. I haven't done that yet because it involves buying a new barrel. So if you want to send, like, Damon, if you want to send me one, I'm happy to run them. But again, my experience so far with any pistol I've run them is they work great. So guys, if you're thinking about doing this, I'd say just do it. I waited and waited and waited, and I just was uneducated about the fact it wasn't that, the hassle wasn't that great of a hassle. And yes, it's expensive. Yes, it totally sucks to pay all the money for the can and then pay the $200 and then wait 6 to 8 months. Like, that is just insane. But you sort of forget about it, and then it's Christmas. Like, they call you up and they say, ooh, your suppressor's here. And you come in and you get it and you fill out the paperwork there, and then you run out the door and you go to the range. That's fun. That is really fun. So there's that upside with it. Now, what's interesting, I think I shared this in my actual video about suppressors, is that when I registered the form, the e-form online, Form 1 for my SBR, it took 29 days to process that and get the tax stamp. This took 7 months. 7 months. So again, what do you think is 7 months, 30 days, SBR, this, with not attaching it to anything? I can't do anything with it. Okay, logic does not apply. Well, guys, we're coming up. It's been about a half hour that I've been online here. I really appreciate it. We had a lot of folks turn out today. We had a couple hundred join us. Like I said, we're going to do this every couple of weeks. I'll put out something, invite you to join. A lot of people have expressed the fact that they're into cans as well. So glad to see you all sharing that with us and with our subscribers. Let me finish up by just saying how much I appreciate all of you. Our channel's a little different in that we're not really into bashing other people, and we try to respond to all comments that come in. We try to do that in a respectful, professional way. I really, really appreciate people that just have different perspectives and disagree with me. And if they do that disagreement in a professional, decent way, and they don't swear and insult other people, like, I'll engage with them. And I'm a student. Like, I'm learning. Yes, I'm an instructor, but fundamentally, I'm a student. I'm learning every single day. And there is no right way other than the safe way. So as long as you're being safe out there in the range with your firearms, and you want to use one technique over another, like, dude, that is awesome. A couple of people talking about their appreciation of M&Ps. I'm with you there. I own several. I also love Glocks. I own a couple of Sig Legions. I own a Beretta 92A3. So I love pistols. And yes, David just says his 5-inch 2.0 FDE's attack driver. That's been my experience with the M&P 2.0s. Is 2.0, excuse me, and they're really fine pistols. So are the Glocks. If you shoot any other brand, I'd shoot that pistol too, and I'm sure I'd love it as well. Well, guys, hey, I want to thank you so much. You guys are awesome. Really appreciate you joining us. Look forward to connecting soon. If you have any thoughts or comments, please feel free to just shoot me a note on through one of the videos, or you can reach out to me through the regular Gmail account, wishse@gmail.com. Happy to engage with you there. Hope you'll continue to share our content, invite friends and family to subscribe, and if you want us to try to take a look at something or do a review or suggest something that we should talk about, we'd love to do that. All right, guys, have a great evening. Finally, as always, stay safe.